Hospital Foundation. He was appointed to Halton Police Services Board for 9 years. At present, and for the last 16 years, he's also serves as president of the Oakville Renegades, which is a large local track and field club. This summer, Andrew was presented with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Award from the federal government for exemplary community service, and the Paul Harris Fellowship Award from the 4 Oakville Rotary Clubs, Nilgan, for community work that reflects the Rotary motto of service above self. This morning, we're very pleased to welcome, and will you welcome with me, Andrew Tyrrell, please. Andrew.
Wow, that was quite an introduction.
I padded it.
So I'm sure that you're asking why this guy is here every February, because that was the last time that I was here. And I wanted to give you just a little bit of a background. So in 1834, slavery was abolished here in Canada, and then it took the United States of America until 1865 to abolish slavery. So in the intervening 30 years, Black people escaped to Canada, seeking freedom, and arrived in Oakville via the Underground Railroad. And I saw that up there were a number of slides about the Underground Railroad. So you may wonder, why Oakville? So in the mid-1800s, Oakville was an official port of entry into Canada. So via Lake Ontario and the 16-Mile Creek, there's a tunnel from the 16-Mile Creek to the Herb Mary House on Trafalgar Road, and evidence of another tunnel leading under Navy Street near the Custom House, which is where Captain R. Wilson was. So Captain R. Wilson brought many African Americans to Oakville concealed aboard ships. And many of you may have wondered why there's a public school named Captain R. Wilson located on Grand Oak Trail in Oakville, and now you know why. And there's many stories like that. James Wesley Hill was a slave who escaped from the States, and he came across the border in a packing box. He first stayed with a friend of his in Bronte, and his first earnings that he made in Canada, he sent back to his slave owner as payment or repayment of his purchase price. James Wesley Hill lived and farmed here in Oakville. He had a strawberry farm, and that helped make Oakville the once-time strawberry industry capital of Canada. James W. Hill Public School is located on Kingsway Drive in Oakville. So that's a little history. Now we fast forward to the 1960s and the 1970s, when the Canadian government implemented a program for Caribbean women to come to Canada and work for families as domestics. So that's just really another word for nanny, babysitter, or maid. But what they did is they looked after families, and in exchange, they were granted permanent resident status. They then, at the end of their serving, used that permanent resident status to sponsor their families to come to Canada. And they used that to launch themselves into different types of careers. So these were independent careers, so they could get along in Canada. In 1977, the Canadian Caribbean Association of Halton was launched. And I believe it was started just for Black folks to have a good time and kind of get together with people who looked like them. And this is back in the time when there were no multicultural restaurants and whatnot. So they were looking for a place where they could eat the kinds of food that they were accustomed to, and they could dance to the kinds of music that they were accustomed to as well. In 1981, CCAH became organized and became an official nonprofit organization. And in 2000, it became a registered charity, which permitted it to obtain grants from the government, as well as receive private donations. And it was at that point that you'll see here that the 4 pillars of the Canadian Caribbean Association was born: community, culture, education, and harmony. So CCAH right now is shooting a movie. It's a 1-hour documentary film, and it brings to life the remarkable history of people of African descent who settled around Oakville. And it's called Freedom on the 16-Mile Creek. The film features interviews by descendants of those first Black families that I talked about, and in Oakville generally, dating back to the mid-1800s. The documentary will be screened here in Oakville, and it's going to be screened to students, children, youth, so they can get an understanding of what it is to be Black here in Oakville. And although it's at great expense to us, CCAH, it will be made available to anybody who wants to see it at no charge. Now, let's get back to the question of why is this guy here in February? If you look around the congregation, you'll notice that while we come from various backgrounds and cultures, we are all Canadian. And as Canadians, we share in many of the same values, including equality, freedom, justice, diversity, and inclusion. And those are just a few of the many Canadian values that Dr. Jean Augustine championed. Jean Augustine arrived in Canada from Grenada under that same domestic program that I talked about. She looked after a family, and then she went to Teachers College, and she became a noted educator. She was elected as the first Black female member of Parliament in the 1990s, and in 1995, she was successful in having a unanimous motion passed in the House of Commons to officially recognize February as Black History Month here in Canada. And that is why I'm here every February. However, as I say each year, we are not only Black in February. And we have much work to do the other 11 months out of the year. For example, in Ontario, we know that Blacks make up 3% of the general population, but yet they make up 15% of the jail population. Why? Why is that? Statistics also say that members of racial minorities have disproportionate levels of contact with both the police and criminal justice system. And we wonder, why? Why is that? Racial minorities are treated differently by the police, and minority members notice that there's a differential treatment, and we as a people have that generational talk with our children about how to act when the police stop them. And there's other people in this population that don't have that similar talk with their children. Black people are significantly more likely to have police use force against them, resulting in serious injury or death, including a much higher risk of being involved in a police shooting where a civilian dies as compared to non-Black people. Why? Why is that? What we have to do is change this narrative and change many narratives. and I'll give you something about my lived experience. I had a conversation recently with a politician who took me out to lunch. That's a good thing, isn't it? And CCAH has a day camp. It goes for 8 weeks, 40 kids each day, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Those day camp kids have camp counselors who serve as positive role models. And these are camp counselors who are going to Guelph University, McMaster, York, McGill, and we had one who was just finishing high school and had received an $80,000 scholarship. So these are high performers. And we also have a full Black volunteer staff. So these little day campers, kids went swimming, learned to play steel pan, they had art lessons, we taught them computer coding, and we installed a 2,000 square foot community garden where they learned how to grow vegetables, and then they did a harvest on Thursday, and then on Friday, we had a chef come out and teach them how to cook those vegetables for themselves and their families. Once a week, we packed them up on a bus, and we sent them out to a conservation area or a provincial park so they could get to experience the outdoors. And we also had Indigenous elders that came out to talk to them about the truth of Canadian history. We had Black historians as well that came out to talk to them. And every Thursday, we had bins of groceries, and as the moms came to pick up their kids, they had a selection of free groceries for their family. 8 weeks. It cost us $110,000 to put this on. Completely no charge to the families. And you'd think, that's good stuff, right, Andrew? That's good stuff. So the politician said to me, Andrew, the only reason why you received that funding was because you played the race card. And I said, well, look at me. Race cards are the only cards that I have. And it's not just one race card, it's the entire deck. My cards are all Black. And the card game that I am playing is unfair. And the odds are stacked against me. But I will not take up my cards and go home and cry when I lose. I will continue to play cards with you. And in one day, I hope that that card game that we are playing will be fair. And you will see me as not somebody who has to take some kind of perceived unfair advantage, but you will see me as your equal. The federal government, for Black History Month, has a theme entitled Ours to Tell. And that means it's our story to tell, boldly and plainly. And as we identify problems, we must be fully involved in crafting the solutions. And that principle is simply nothing about us without involving us. The CCAH theme for Black History Month is connecting communities. And I'm here today to continue on my year-over-year quest to do so. And I'm thankful to this congregation and to Randy Williams, who helps me the other 11 months out of the year. So take a look at Randy and take a look at me, and what do you see? You see that we are not only Black in February. I brought along a friend of mine, Roger Gibbs, and Roger heads the CCAH music program, where people of all nationalities and music abilities, so for you beginner musicians, you could come along too, and he brings them all together to learn about each other. And then what he does is he takes them out and they perform in public venues in and around Halton. They perform at long-term care facilities. They perform at retirement facilities. And they're doing these performances in order to support not only our seniors, but also the people who care for them in such a loving and meaningful way. And we also deliver chef-prepared meals to those frontline workers. And last Thursday, during the snowstorm, we delivered 145 meals to Tansley Woods up in Burlington for those frontline personal support workers. And tomorrow, we're going to be up in Allendale at the long-term care facility there, where we will be delivering to Allendale and Milton 185 chef-prepared meals to those frontline support workers. So for me, that's putting into action the CCH theme of connecting communities. And I'm here today to connect again with this congregation and this community. And I want to bring up Roger, and he's going to give us just a few little musical interludes to take us away. Come on up, Roger.
Your shining sun. As morning breaks the heaven on high, I lift my heavy load up to the sky. Sun beats down with a burning blow and mingles my sweat with the earth below. Come sing with me. Oh, island in the sun, built to me by my Father's hand. All my days I will sing and praise of your forest water, your shining sand. Ooh, ooh, dee-doy-doy-doy-doy, dee-doy-doy. Da-dum, ba-dum, doy, be-doy-doy, da-dum, da-da-day, dee-dee-dee-day, dee-dum, da-dum, da-dum, da. Most people don't know the history of Calypso in this country. They think it started in 80 with the crowning of Lord Smokey. They never checked it seriously to know it was here since the 40s. First introduced to Canada by a Trini named Lord Caressa. Then in the 60s was Lord Lance, an English chap who took a chance, doing heating with Calypso on a popular TV show. Lord Griner was big in this land. We had Bill Trotman, funny man, and you can't forget Dave Martin, pushing Calypso with the trade winds. Class in session, hey, please pay attention. Listen to this singer Calypso history in Canada, yes. Nai 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 doi doi, dee doi doi, da dam ba dam doi, dee doi doi, da dam ba dam doi, dee 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 doi, dee dam da dam da dam da. The Toronto Carnival, I know, is a big, big bacchanal, I know. The Toronto Carnival, I know, is a big, big bacchanal, I know. Oh, everybody dancing, putting on a show. Together we moving, down the road we go. The Toronto Carnival, I know, is a big, big bacchanal, I know. The Toronto Carnival, I know, is a big, big bacchanal, I know. I know. Thank you very much.
Well, that was very unexpected, and pleasantly so. Thank you both very much. Andrew, thank you for sharing with us and challenging